Thank you guys so much for joining me this morning. We're really excited to get this video together on League of Legends DFS strategy. We're lucky to have a couple SaberSim players joining us. We've got Kyle and Alex, who both have been playing DFS League of Legends for years. And they're joined by myself, who is a complete League of Legends newbie. Andy Baldacci, I'm the CEO of SaberSim, and we've got Danny Steinberg, who is a SaberSim partner and professional DFS player. And Danny kind of bridges the gap between me and Alex and Kyle, because Danny is very experienced with DFS, being a professional, has played League of Legends and does play League of Legends, but is new to the DFS game. So what we're hoping to do today is really just kind of break down what goes into becoming a winning League of Legends players, how to adapt kind of your standard DFS approach to this game, what makes it different, and all of that. We're going to do our best to cover as much as we can, but we're obviously not going to be able to get to everything. So if there are any questions you have that we don't answer, feel free to reach out to us in Slack or to shoot me an email at andy@sabersim.com, and I'll reach out to the guys and we'll do our best to get everything answered so that you can really hit the ground running as DFS League of Legends is blowing up. It's kind of crazy how big these contests have gotten. I think there's like 100K to first coming up on DK. I mean, every day it seems like there's a 6-figure prize pool. So I think there's a lot of money to be made if you know how to approach that. And hopefully by the end of this today, you'll have a good context on how to do that. So with that long-winded introduction, thank you guys for joining me today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is exciting. Been waiting years, Mav and I have, to have big league contests instead of the $100 things.
Seriously.
Last 5 years.
Getting that $300 first place prize with the 10 people in your contest.
I feel like your DFS trajectory has completely transformed in the last week or so. And you're finally, it's your time to shine right now, I think. So for people who aren't as familiar with League of Legends, can you just give a little bit of context on kind of what the game is and how it works and what to pay attention to? We don't need to, like I was saying before, walk through the rule book or anything, but just to get people up to speed on the important parts. Where should they even begin? What should they be thinking about?
Real quick too, so just dating back 5 years when I started, when Alex got me into this, I was the king of making fun of Mav for watching these games, and I was the guy that said anyone that watches sports or esports is just the ultimate nerd. And then I started playing DFS and I started watching it, and now every Saturday it's streamed on my TV, and my son watches it with me. My wife gives me a bunch of crap, but it's I thoroughly enjoy it. So even right now, if you think that it's just some nerdy game, but if you really get into it, I promise you, it's just as exciting as any other sport out there.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I am a giant nerd. I mean, I'm an athletic director for a living, but I love sports. I grew up playing sports. I teach sports. That's my job. But this is just another sport. There's so much, there's so many aspects to it that is a team motivated game. So there's something new every single time that makes it really interesting to watch. So League of Legends is obviously a computer game. It is a MOBA, which stands for Multiplayer Online Battle Arena. So basically, it's one map with 5 players from each team. Each of those players has a position, and the objective is to destroy the other team's base. There are different things that go on during that time period, but that's the gist of it. You're just looking to push towards the other team's base and destroy what's called the Nexus, which is basically at the other end of the map for you on where you start. So as you can see, it says blue Nexus and red Nexus. You'll hear them talking about one team is on the red side, one team is on the blue side. The blue side is always the bottom. The red side is always the top. There are different advantages, disadvantages to that, but we're not going to go too deep into that. So like I said, there's 5 players. There's one player that generally goes into the top lane. There's one player that goes into the mid lane. On DK, they're called the ADC, which is attack, damage, carry. And then there is a support, which kind of babysits that person. The attack, damage, carry is generally someone who starts off not as strong and then gets stronger as we go along. And then you can see here it says jungle. There's one player that goes into the jungle. There are different little monsters that hang around in there, and he kind of kills monsters. And his role of the game is to try to influence the bottom lane, the mid lane, or the top lane as much as possible to gain small advantages. You can see it says turrets. They're basically structures in the middle of the lanes that fire little bolts of energy at things as they go back and forth. You're trying to kill turret by turret, and then you'll see it says 3 inhibitors here. Once you kill those things, then you get big minions that spawn in the lanes. Each lane has a wave of minions that comes down every 30 seconds. And if you kill the inhibitors, then it has like a giant minion that comes with it that does a lot of damage. There's objectives in the game which teams are trying to play for. When you draft your team on there, they get points through objectives. So killing a turret is 1 point. Getting the first kill of the game is 2 points. There's a dragon that spawns here every 6 minutes, I think it is now. It might be 5 minutes. It changes a lot. If you kill the dragon, your team gets 2 points. Each dragon has different things it does for your team. And then up here, before the first 20 minutes, there is a giant crab. They call it
Is
Shelly.
it actually a giant crab?
It's a giant crab. They call it Shelly.
That's great.
If you kill that, you can summon it. It spawns twice on 6-minute intervals. If you kill it once, then it'll spawn in 6 minutes. But at 20 minutes, a giant purple worm dragon thing spawns here called the Baron, and that is a major objective. If you kill that, it gives your team a giant buff that makes your minions super strong, and you'll see most of the teams will fight in this river here for control of this area so that they can take those objectives.
Yeah, why don't you just backtrack a little bit and talk how the choosing of the champions work? Like, is it a draft?
Yeah. So at the beginning of the game, each team gets to ban 3 champions. After
and
that,
I guess just to go like really basic, what is a champion?
Yeah, so
a champion is the thing you're choosing to control, your avatar, I guess. They call it a summoner. So you're the summoner controlling the little dude in the map. Well, there are, I think, 139 champions right now. So with the draft, each team gets to ban 3 different champions, and then they go pick order. It goes first pick gets 1 pick, then the next team gets 2 picks, then the next team gets 2 picks, then the next team gets 1 pick. Yeah, it's snake drafts down there if you guys are familiar with that. Then each team gets another 2 bans, and then they snake draft the last 2 picks. So each team gets 5 different champions. Each one has 4 unique abilities. Some have a little bit more because they push the mold on how a champion should be. And some counter other champions, like they're just good against them. Some are weaker in the beginning and really strong late. They all have different unique things to them. And teams will draft in a way to try to give themselves an advantage at a certain point in the game, or to pick against a team's other picks, or they'll try to ban out champions who teams are really good with.
Yeah, and I would say that, just to add on, a lot of these players, professional players, have what we call comfort picks that they've kind of grown up in the game playing it, that they're good with, that they know all the different abilities and when to do them, and all that sort of thing. It's I think important to realize, and we can go into this further, but the meta changes constantly, and that affects the draft and indirectly or directly affects the fantasy points that come of that. So for instance, just if we go back a season or two, the meta at the time was...
When you talk about meta, is it just kind of, can you give a little context around what that means specifically?
So League does updates all the time. I think every 2 weeks there's a minor update that comes out, but with those updates come different buffs and nerfs for all the different champions that Alex was just talking about. It changes. That whole draft is, every update is, there's new draft, there could be new champions. So there's a whole, it just sounds so nerdy saying it out loud and listening to Mav. I've always been a sports guy my whole life, and I got sucked into this thing, and it's just, it's a whole new world. So it's a lot to take in.
And Alex,
you're doing a good job explaining, I think. I think like a lot of basic stuff to go over. 80. So there are, just reiterating what was just said, the champions' abilities change on different patches. The strength of you can pick. I don't know if we even talked about this. You can buy items. For your champion, and the abilities of those items change. And that can change like the macro strategy of the game.
Are those changes intentionally like getting something, an item or whatever it might be, overpowered, or is it just kind of changes are made and then players realize, okay, this is not properly priced or whatever it may be, and they take advantage of it, and then they come out with a new update to kind of balance things? Like, are they trying to get a balance, or are they intentionally making certain things overpowered?
I think I have a good answer to this, and let me know if this is correct. I think what the Riot, the creators of the game, or the people in the game are trying to do, they're trying to balance the game, which is like take things that are overpowered and nerf them, which is make them less good.
Weaker, yeah.
Buff, which is make some items or characters a little better. And I think what happens is they don't do a perfect job of that, and sometimes they get imbalances.
That's a good way of saying that they don't do a good job of
it. And Riot releases new champions, I think probably every season. And when they do that, right, there's a money-making aspect behind the game where people have to buy these champions. So what they do is when they release a new champion, typically that new champion is going to be overpowered, right? So if you've been watching these league games, recently there's a top laner called Set, which is a relatively new champion, but it's very overpowered. And I can guarantee the next nerf that comes out or next update, there'll be some nerfs to that champion and maybe some of the items that he uses as well. So it's a constantly evolving balancing act.
And what we'll do is later on in this, we're going to kind of walk through what this actual process looks like. We're going to talk about some resources to get data, to get stats, to get condensed versions of the game, because just like with any DFS, there's a huge range of kind of time commitments that you can invest in this. And just to get started, just to get your feet wet, and especially the smaller stakes contests, you don't necessarily need to watch all of these matches. You don't need to even watch the condensed matches, I'm sure. But as you move up in stakes, as you get more serious, if it's something you enjoy, whatever it may be, you can kind of scale up your time investment based on what makes sense for you, for your life. I mean, I know a lot of us right now have some extra free time, so it might make sense to kind of get really involved in this if you enjoy that. But we'll make sure to cover some tips for people that might not have or want to kind of go all in on this. Yeah, so going kind of back to just the fundamentals for the different sites between FanDuel and DraftKings, and just in general, like what are the major scoring statistics that kind of stand out?
This site is called oracleselixir.com. As you can see here, oracleselixir.com. Just for reference, Oracle's Elixir was an item that used to be in the game that let you see invisible things. So you're seeing the invisible stats. They took that out of the game. But this is for LCK, which is super boring. So we're going to go to a more fun one, which is LPL. LPL is the Chinese region of League of Legends. As you can see in these stats, you have total kills, which is where you get your points for DraftKings. Every kill is 3 points. They have assists. Every assist you get is 2 points. The little minions that run through the wave, each one of those I think is like 0.1 point.
0.02.
0.02 points. And then there are deaths. Every death is -1 point. So you'll also see here it says dragon percentage or dragon control. That's, once again, every time a team kills a dragon, you get points from that. So what you're really looking for is almost like basketball. You're looking for pace. You're looking for two teams that just love to battle and go at it and go hard. And if you read my write-ups, I always go into this. It says combined kills per minute. This is team kills and opposing team kills. That means how many deaths they're also giving up. So you're looking for a team that just loves to get in there and go hard. If you sort it, you can see it'll show you the top team is Invictus Gaming. If you've ever watched their games, it's like watching the Suns or
like mid-2000 Suns.
Yeah.
Amari Nash Suns.
Yeah. Okay. Like really fast paced. They don't play a lot of defense. They give up a lot of kills. Also, they get a ton and they give up a ton just because they're overly aggressive. It's just super bananas type stuff. So Invictus Gaming is the fastest paced team, and then Billy Gaming is the slowest paced team. Now, this is just for the Chinese region. If you look at another region like LCK, which is a Korean region.
So I guess actually on that note, this is probably a good time to just get into what the major regions are that we're all degenerate gambling on DraftKings.
LCS is the American region, North America. LEC is the European. LCK is the Korean region, and then LPL is the Chinese region. That's all that DraftKings offers.
Okay.
So there's 4 major regions, and then there's smaller regions, but yeah. DraftKings is just those 4. And in terms of
one single league per slate?
No, not generally, yes, but right now, they've actually done it since the inception, but people just weren't used to it. They mix up the Korean region and the Chinese region because they happen at the same time.
Yeah, so there's like LPL, LCK is one slate right now.
Aren't LPL, LCK, is that best out of 3?
Well, I was going to say,
Yes.
So the reason they combine those 2 is it is best out of 3, and LEC and LCS are best of 1. So like if you look at the fantasy points per game, that column in DK, when you draft a team, it's going to be a lot higher in the LCK and LPL just because they're playing, at minimum 2 games. So
exactly.
Okay, so it would be like ridiculous to combine 2 leagues that have different numbers of games and the matches, because you would just pick the one with more games.
The advantage would be astronomical.
Okay. That makes sense.
So
keep going now.
Yeah, so pace is generally the thing I personally pay a lot of attention to. But when we're talking about this LPL LCK slate, I just want to show you something real quick. This is always something that I'm like, I don't know why people play LCK teams as much as they do. But just looking at this, if you look at the lowest combined kills per minute at 0.63 for the LPL, if you look at LCK,
it's like 0.7 is the top, right?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
0.68 is the top. So the lowest paced Chinese team is about middle of the pack in LCK. And the highest paced is almost double the top one in LCK.
So if you talk about a strategy, right, when you look at this, we just talked about how LPL and LCK have combined slates. I mean, this is a huge moneymaker for me dating back a couple of years, but if there's 2 games from LCK and 2 games from LPL, a lot of times it makes sense to do a stack of the 2 LPL teams that you think are going to win those games and just fade the LCK.
Yeah,
and in the past, it's worked too when you've had the average people, because just in terms of popularity, LCK was kind of like the premier league in League of Legends for a long time. And, the average person would kind of follow those big name people. There's a guy named Faker who's considered the best mid laner in the world, but people are going to play those names and those teams that they at least know a little bit, just for the average league fan. When you get these LPL teams, I think the second one on the LPL list there, I forget who it was, but just after IG, they're not a good team. If you look at their record, they're 7-9, but they're constantly pushing the pace, and that's where the fantasy points are.
Yeah, it's just like in LCK, the top team in pace is the worst team in the league, or the second worst team in the league, APK. Their CPK is so high because they give up a ton of kills.
We'll get into kind of more of the specifics in just a few minutes, but one thing I kind of want to stress a bit is just we've talked a lot about the context of League of Legends, what makes it different, how it works, and we're going to get, again, more into kind of the specifics of lineup construction, but to kind of bridge that gap, one thing I think that's important to think about is just fundamentally what makes strong GPP lineups. And to me, a lot of that comes down to upside. And it's finding ways where you can separate your lineups from the rest of the field in whatever that may be. And typically what we found, the 3 main areas of that to be are through correlations, which lead to stacks, ownership, and variance. And Danny's going to talk kind of some about what he's found on the correlation side of things. And then we'll talk about ownership and variance as well, and just how that, on sort of a fundamental standpoint, how that impacts how you should be thinking about lineup construction, so that you can have sort of a good foundation to build your lineups on. And then after that, we can get into some of the specifics of, okay, here's what this actually looks like in practice. But we always find it important to just help you make some of these decisions for yourself by understanding the fundamentals. And I mean, in this, when we were looking at some of the correlations, it kind of blew me away how strong they were. So Danny, do you want to just jump into kind of what jumped out at you when you were looking at the correlations? Because to me, it seems like when they are as strong as they are, which we shouldn't get into, this is probably like one of the most important things you can look at. It's just really understanding what those look like.
Totally. Just as a point of a fact, is there a difference in scoring between FD and DK?
FanDuel makes you play 3 teams.
Okay, so that's the only difference.
Well, there are a few differences in points and such, but that is the biggest difference, that you have to take 3 teams instead of 2.
But mostly it's pretty close, similar. Like the correlations between DK and FD scoring should be.
But you just can't have as big as stacks.
Right. The biggest way to look at it is if you're playing on DraftKings, you're playing like a 2-game parlay, where if you're playing on FanDuel, you're playing a 3-team parlay. Like you're trying to nail the 3 highest scoring teams and players from those teams instead of just having to hit the 2. It doesn't mean you can't play 3 teams from DraftKings, because sometimes that is something that can work out. But yeah, on FanDuel, you just have to.
Okay, so let me get into the correlations. So SaberSim, we have a little bit of the data from the different leagues. And my prior kind of going into looking at the correlations was that people on the same team would obviously be really positively correlated. I would think that ADC and support would have the highest positive correlation. And then players on opposing teams, you would think would be negatively correlated. So it's a small sample size so far, but I was kind of surprised by what I found. Actually, the strongest correlation in the small sample size, it's only a sample size of 63 games, is jungle and ADC. And jungle and team also has a strong correlation. Jungle in everything seems to have a strong correlation.
Yeah, jungle just influences the entire map. So, yeah.
Okay, so that makes sense to you guys. So support and ADC is also pretty high. Really, the least strong correlations on the team level are between top and the rest of the team, which makes sense to me because the top lane tends to be more isolated.
Yeah, they're on an island.
So I don't know if we even mentioned this earlier, but the one thing that's unique about bottom lane is teams normally have 2 characters on each team go to the bottom lane. And support and ADC are always together most of the time. So that's why it made sense to me that support and ADC would be really highly correlated. Some of the interesting things is remind me of the leagues that are best out of 3 versus best out of 1.
LCK and LPL are best out of 3, and then LCS and LEC are best of 1.
Okay, so Europe and America are best out of 1. And
yeah, they have the poor way of actually doing it. Yeah.
So for Europe and America, there is strong negative or somewhat strong negative correlation between players on opposing teams. For Korea and China, that's actually not the case. And I think the reason is because of a sort of blowout dynamic. So, like, if a team just loses, so tell me if this makes sense to you guys. If a team just loses in a best out of 3 the first 2 games, they're not going to get as many points as if compared to if they play a 3-game match, right? Is that correct?
The games that you don't play where you get that 20-point bonus, right, for LCK and LPL, a lot of times that 20 points isn't enough. You want the teams to go 3 games, right? Because
you want it to be closer.
If your ADC scores 20 points, it's not going to be enough for any GPP.
Yeah, so that makes sense. Well, where if you have a best out of 1, then there's no considerations of that. You just want the team you play to completely smash the other team, right? Yep. Or do like a really long game. Maybe would be for
game length generally is a positive correlation towards how many kills are going to happen, because if the game is going a longer time, that means there's more opportunities for kills to happen in that game.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
and sometimes it's good too, even with the two bad teams going against each other with an elongated game, right? If you kind of tie it back to NBA, right? When a couple of years ago when the Sixers were in that trust the process stage, but they were putting up, it was like Michael Carter-Williams and I forget who else, but he was getting a triple-double every game, but the games are absolute shit. If you're an NBA fan, you watch it and you're like,
that was when I first started playing.
Trash, but you look at fantasy games and they're in every winning lineup. So it's kind of the same in league, right? You get those games that 2 crappy teams that just want to fight, but they don't know how to close out. A lot of fantasy points are.
And then, Danny, were there any other correlations that jumped out at you when you're kind of analyzing that?
I think just looking at the correlations in general, they are gigantic. The correlation we had SaberSim found between jungle and ADC was 0.94 if you round up, which is higher than I've ever seen.
Right.
QB and wide receiver, I think, is like one of the highest positive correlations in any sport. Maybe NHL is better, and that's like 0.4 at its most in like certain players. So the correlations are absolutely gigantic, which means to me that playing as many players on the same team as possible is very optimal.
Yeah.
There's moderate negative correlations between players on opposing teams in the European and American leagues. So that should also mean that you should be inclined to not play players on opposing teams. That's not clearly the case in the 3-game leagues, and that may be a source of edge you can have if I kind of want to wait on more data here, but I'm seeing some positive correlations between opposing teams in the best of 3 data.
And just as a quick point of information, we're literally in the process right now. Hopefully by the end of the day today, we'll have a much bigger set of data for past matches so we can go deeper into these relationships and really build out a stronger kind of correlation model to better analyze these. But right now, we still feel like we have a decent enough sample to draw some inferences from it.
Just on the playing teams against each other in the NA, in the LCS and LEC, the games yesterday, the top 2 winning lineups in the $10 were game stacks. It was Team Liquid versus C9 with a random team that scored the most. That's what took down the biggest contests. So
I feel like it should be an exception to the
it's
rule.
such an outlier.
It is the biggest, but people always ask me, they're like, well, should you game stack? And I'm like, if you're playing 1 lineup, no. If you're playing 3 lineups, no. If you're playing 20, maybe you can have 1 in there. Like on a 2-game slate, I'm definitely going to have like 1 or 2 2-game stacks, which I'll go over when I'm building lineups. If you're playing 150, go nuts. Like there are definitely possibilities
for this that it's more of an ownership play, like a lineup construction play, like. Because I don't think you're necessarily doing that to take advantage of the game stack. You're more doing that to be contrarian. And as you have more lineups, you can take riskier plays that might be plus EV, but are just going to like destroy your variance. And so like, is that the angle you're saying? Is like, you're not saying in like an absolute sense, these game stacks are good in terms of maximizing likelihood of projection. It's just that they're unlikely to have that combination highly owned, so you can take advantage of that if you are willing to take more risk.
It's like game stacking NBA. You're hoping that it goes into double overtime, goes really long, and they just happen to be the highest scoring players. It's not a skill-based thing that you're doing this on.
Are there strong negative correlations like that in a game stack in NBA, Danny?
I guess in NBA it wouldn't be as much because you don't get points for the deaths of the players because no one does.
I mean, it's interesting because sometimes correlations do not necessarily match my intuitions. With NBA, you're right. Like if a game goes into double and triple overtime, that's like great for a game stack. But there's also situations where like a team gets blown out. There's also like negative correlation events.
Absolutely. It's not a good idea. Like I tell everyone, it's not a good idea. But if you want to run a few, I don't hold it against you.
I'm hoping to see more data on the Korean and Chinese leagues because in those it actually may make sense to game stack. In the European and American leagues, I would strongly recommend against that. I think based on the super strong correlations, the optimal lineup construction is going to involve whoever's in your captain position. You should have 4 players on the team. That's
generally how I build mine.
Yeah, me too. Yep.
Yeah.
For DraftKings, you only have to use 2 different teams, so it makes sense to do like a 4 and a 3 stack. But for FanDuel, 4-2-1 also makes sense.
Yeah, dating back to your correlation point about jungle and ADC, you said it was 0.94, which is the highest you've seen. The site that Mav was sharing earlier, the Oracle's Elixir, he was on the team section. There's a player section for each team for each league. And to dive in further, and this kind of goes along with actually watching the games, but when you look at individual player data, there's a kill participation header column. And that's key to look at because not just like any sport, any game, not all players are considered equal, right? And they kind of have a different style. So, it was 62, 63 game sample. There's a good chance that maybe a couple of those junglers that are influencing that correlation are really high kill participation people, whereas others aren't. So it's not to say it's black and white when you go to build a lineup, right, that you're going to want your jungler with your ADC. I think it really depends on which teams and which players are playing, if that makes sense.
Okay, sometimes you have your Tony Snell of the team.
I kind of want to get back to this, but that actually makes me think that players who have higher kill participation historically are going to be higher correlated with the rest of their team.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm going to research that idea.
but yeah, I think there's nuance to how to build those stacks, but it seems like when correlations are that strong, you're trying to just build. The top priority is building the biggest stack with the captain.
Yep.
That the site allows. And then so in FanDuel, rather than having like a 3-2-2, like a 4-2-1, it makes more sense because that one stack has so much more upside than splitting it up into 3 stacks. Is that accurate?
Yeah,
it is. And I would even take that, and this is, we're going past 101 here. We're going to League 103, but if you look at the screenshots of the lineups that I've posted recently where I've had success, it's been a 4-stack with the captain, right? So either a mid or ADC in that captain spot. And because of the slate and because of the price of the other stack, I would have 2 people from one team, and then I basically just punt the team position. So, if we use teams for an example, like if we use that IG gaming thing that Mav just had up, I would have 4 people, the ADC in the captain spot, 2 people from some other team, but then my team position would just be the cheapest team on the slate to make that lineup work. Yeah. Because the points you get, and Mav talked about the fantasy points you get from the team, right? So Dragons, Barons, all that stuff. I mean, it's the range of outcomes is small. It's not like an actual player. So punting that, the difference that you get by upgrading a position player is much better than keeping that team.
Is the logic similar to how you approach defense in football, Danny?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was really well said by Kyle. Yeah, it's very similar. I think that sort of logic does make sense. You really just want to, with football, you can often, in optimal lineups, you're paying way down for defense because there's just not as much payoff from paying up for defense. You can get players who have much higher projected scoring into the lineup with higher salaries. Yeah, it's a very
and Kyle, one of the things that you had mentioned to me before we started recording, and that we kind of touched on a little bit ago, is just ownership in general. How are you thinking about ownership when it's just still such it's not a new DFS sport. It's been around for years, but this amount of interest is irregular and is bringing in a ton of new players to it. So how are you approaching ownership right now?
Yeah, ownership has always been, I think, my foremost thing when looking at a slate. And the way I kind of look at it is, and it kind of goes into recency bias, right? I've been playing DFS now for, 8 years. And at the start of DFS, if you remember, recency bias was huge and people were building lineups off of box scores, and that's basically how it went. And
by recency bias, you mean like whoever had a big game last game, we're just going to play them.
Yeah, I mean, if I don't know, Kobe Bryant went off for rip, but if he went off for 50 fantasy points, there's a good chance he's going to be 50% owned that next game. And it's huge in NFL too, but I think as DFS has matured over time, people have kind of caught on that that's an edge that could be had. But in League, it's different, and it really hasn't changed. And we got all these new people now, but I've always looked at recency bias and box scores as a way to differentiate myself from other people. And I have a good example here, right? If you played the slate over the weekend for LCS, on Saturday, 100 Thieves was playing TSM. Now, if you look at the data, it wasn't a great game to play, but 100 Thieves came in, I think, at about 2 to 5% owned. I think their top player was like 4-point-something% owned.
Super low.
And they ended up winning the game versus TSM. They scored really well. They were on a lineup I had that did really well. And if you look at, because LCS plays Saturday and Sunday, if you look at the Sunday slate, 100 Thieves went up to 25 to 40% owned on their highest people.
Yeah, Cody's son was like 43% owned.
So
in the
we're talking about a 30% ownership increase, probably more than 30%.
30% points.
Right. Yeah, off of one day, one slate, right?
Yeah.
And it's just insane to me that happens. And I mean, if you look at the game, 100 Thieves didn't end up winning, but they shouldn't have. CLG had a huge lead and should have been a dud and should have been a huge edge for myself, right, who basically faded 100 Thieves altogether and was huge on CLG. But that's a huge way to get an advantage, right? And a lot of people are just, they see that one big game, those huge kills, and they remember the person that won that contest from the previous day, and they're going to be huge the next day. So.
Or there are teams that are just like always heavily owned, like G2 on the LEC, on the European League. G2 is always just, granted, they generally have the most kills, but they are always heavily owned. I'm talking like 20, 30, 40% owned in some of these 5-game slates where there's just a bunch of games going on and they're just the majority of the ownership.
How high is the variance for individual positions or teams? Like how from match to match, like how consistent is it? Because in traditional sports, you have basketball where outcomes typically do follow almost a normal distribution where it's going to be pretty stable with performance just varying the majority of the time, plus or minus within a small range of that average. And then you have baseball and hockey and golf where it's not at all like that. So like where on the kind of variance range does League of Legends fall, or at least in your kind of opinions on this?
Let me start here and then Matt, you can jump in. But
sure.
It kind of goes back into what I think Alex was saying near the beginning there, right? Is the different champions that are in play. And I think that plays a huge part. So if we look at, forget a win-loss, but based on the champions that get played, a good example would be a mid laner. Right now we talked about meta before and what's popular, but a mid laner is typically a strong scoring position, someone that deals a lot of damage, that can put up a lot of fantasy points. But the meta right now is to almost put a mid laner on a tank player. And there's a champion called Ornn, which is pretty popular in the mid lane. There's other ones too. But I mean, a tank isn't going to put up a lot of fantasy points. He might be lucky to get a lot of assists, but that's not his role on the team to help the actual team win. So I think the variance is different by position. I think on ADC it's probably tighter, but on something like mid lane where there's a wide range of potential champions, but not just the champion, the type of champion that you can play, where it can increase that variance. So someone like Perks, the mid laner on G2 in the LEC League, he's one of the highest damage output people, in the world at mid lane. But if he gets put on a tank champion during the draft selection, you're going to be lucky to get 30 fantasy points out of him, even in a blowout. So
to make sure I'm thinking about this right, it sounds like that for some positions, a lot of the reason for their variance or their increase in variance isn't because of like in-game dynamics. It's because of the fact that there's that draft where the champion and who the champion is changes significantly, and based on that, their role is going to change significantly of different positions.
Absolutely. So like a coach is going to go into a game with a game plan. Obviously, he's going to be like, okay, this is how I want the game to go out and go. And if it doesn't go that way, you guys might need to pivot. But if it does go that way, let's just run it that way. So top lane can have a lot of variance because sometimes they'll be put on a tank champion who's not going to get a lot of kills. And sometimes they're going to be put on what's called a split pusher. And they may never join team fights. All they're going to do is just try to push that top lane over and over and over again and never join a team fight and just let the other team try to 4v5 or pull someone up there constantly, and they're just not involved at all. Different players have a varied pool of players that they're comfortable on. Generally I'd say the average player probably has a pool of about 5 to 10 players or 5 to 10 champions that they're pretty comfortable on. And depending on what they pick, the draft just throws everything for a loop, especially in these best of one games. You can just have a bad draft where you just draft horribly and it's just not good against the other team. And you can have the top team drop a game to the worst team in the slate, like the worst team in the league. It happens like that sometimes. So the variance can be, this team should just absolutely crush this other team. They go in, you look at the draft, you're like, what were they thinking? How are they going to pull this off? And then they don't. And then your top team who you invested all this, money in just scores horribly.
Which is why I hate League for cash.
I refuse to play cash in League just because of that reason too.
Okay, random question on the same point. So let's say, just to consider the variance between team performances, let's say Cloud9 plays counter logic. This is the best team in the league versus the worst team in the league.
Yeah.
What percentage of the time do you think Cloud9 wins the one?
90% of the time.
90%.
And then there's going to be one game where Cloud9's going to mess around, or they're going to draft something super wonky, and Pull Belter, who's the mid laner on CLG, he tends to be the person who carries for that team. They're going to mess up and they're going to feed him too many kills, and he's actually going to carry that team. Because if you actually look at the skill level between like the top players and the mid players and the bottom players, it's not that huge. I think all of them play so much that they're within a close enough spectrum that if they mess around too much, they're definitely able to just give away games and let other teams win.
They're still professionals. Like at the end of the day, they're all still, they might be like the worst team, but they're not just absolute trash.
Yeah, they're still better than I am. Yeah, that's for sure.
Any team can win any game in any slate is what it comes down to. Yeah,
I absolutely 100% believe that. I mean, Team Liquid, who looks like one of the worst teams in the slate, should have beat Cloud9. CLG should have won their game yesterday too. They just didn't play their plan properly. But it was definitely in the cards for it to happen.
So to me, it seems like, to kind of draw some parallels, this is closer for different reasons, but like because of the variance, because of the strength of stacks, this is relatively similar to baseball, in the sense of like going super heavy on just one team. If you're doing 150 lineups is probably bad, even if it might be like theoretically plus EV. Just the value of diversification in a high variance game goes up. Is that a reasonable kind of parallel to draw?
I think so. I think this is where Kyle and I tend to be a little bit different in our lineup construction.
Yeah.
If I feel very strongly that a team's going to be the top team or the highest scoring team on that slate, and I'm playing 20 lineups, I have no problem going all in on that team and then just mixing up my smaller stacks with that one giant stack. My ceiling goes really high, but my floor can just be like, I completely brick the slate. And if I'm not super comfortable, then I mix it up.
And I mean, that's a risk tolerance question. I mean, it's like giant squid going ham on like, I forget even who, but like on like week 15 last year and just getting wrecked in NFL. And it like might have been plus EV, but it increases your risk dramatically. So that's where the diversification comes in, where it might not add ROI to diversify, but potentially in like the increase in stability, it might have a positive outcome for you, I guess is how to put it.
I think I tend to hedge more than the average or person that's been doing League for more often. If you look at that one that I posted a couple days ago, if you look at on my mobile phone, all the different contests I was in, the lineup that won in first place was basically a hedge lineup off of what I thought would be the highest scoring one. But I just got lucky that my hedge kind of hit and it was low owned. So,
and the last point I want to talk about here before we get into some of the other kind of unique considerations around the game is just when it comes to projections. I mean, right now there really aren't many out there, but when something is so high variance, when correlations are so strong, what role do projections actually play in your process?
I know Matt's going to hate me for this, but I don't use any projections. I've watched a game for the past 10 years. I can generally look at two teams and generally know the outcome in terms of how that game is going to play out. If I could see the draft before I made the lineups, I'd cash like 80% of my lineups. But that's the biggest variance.
Right, that's where the variance comes from.
The draft is just there are times when the draft happens and I just turn off the game. I'm like, this is just, I don't even know what you were thinking. I have no chance of winning this one because that draft is just god awful. But for me, I don't use projections. If I was a brand new player and I didn't know what was the strongest position, how teams generally play, how to correlate the pace of the game to the teams that are playing, I'd use projections 100%. But just for me personally, since I've been playing for so long, I have a very good idea of what's generally going to happen in the games.
Kyle, how do you approach it? Is it similarly?
Similarly, yeah. I mean, I've never been big on projections in this. I mean, there's been various sites over the years that have tried to come up with projections, and I've tried importing those into different tools I've used over the years, and I've never found it successful. But I think it goes to Mav's point of really understanding the teams. For me, my work goes into the pre-work on SS, my player pool. Mm-hmm. So for instance, like my captain spot, I basically sort it by team, and then I uncheck everyone that I know I wouldn't want in captain. It's always going to be the mid ADC, but depending on the team I'm at, if I'm at 100 Thieves, I'm going to want someday as a potential captain because he's a carry on that team. So for me, it's, if and I think I said this in Slack support to you, Andy, but if there was a smart diversity thing, I'd jack that mother all the way up.
Yeah, for real.
I want that randomization into my lineups and the different, permutations that are possible for a given stack. So,
yeah.
I'm not going to do projections. I'm just going to adjust my player pool to fit those.
And Danny, let me know what you think about this. But to me, it seems like when correlations are that strong, like by getting that right, and you can be more qualitative with how you like if you know the positions, how they're correlated, like by just taking advantage of the right stacks, you can be more qualitative on who to put in there and still have a significant edge because they're just so strong.
Yeah, I would say maybe heuristic based, you could say.
Yes.
Like, I think with heuristics, the stuff you're talking about or we've talked about where the guy in your captain spot, you're using 4 guys in the same team, and you're prioritizing that. And because there's such strong correlations, we know that's going to be optimal. You're right. I think you can be a little more qualitative about it for sure.
Yeah, and this is something where right now we don't have projections up because we don't feel like we have enough data to do them accurately. We are going to be working on this, but I think what we're really trying to emphasize here is that if you don't have a way to more qualitatively kind of pick who are the best plays out of this, if you don't have as much of a background, projections, assuming they're accurate, are going to be a good way to get pointed in the right direction. Mm-hmm. But as long as you have that strong kind of template for how you're building lineups to take advantage of correlations, it doesn't make as much difference. And what really matters is just taking advantage of those correlations. But what I want to kind of transition to is just some of the, for me, coming in with no League of Legends background, the things that are just like kind of blow my mind. What are when do substitutions happen? Like what are the likely scenarios to be aware of this? And if unexpected things happen, how do you respond?
I'll say this, and Alex jump in after, but it's not like other quote unquote real sports, right, where they have to disclose information. NBAs can sometimes be a couple minutes before tip that you get news, but League, they don't have to do that. And I can't tell you, and it's just, if you're going to get into League, you're going to get burnt. It's going to happen to everyone. I saw people in Slack yesterday talking about the Solo Viper thing. And
super tilted.
I mean, it sucks, right? And it happens to everyone, but everyone's in the same playing field. There's no one that, unless they're in that, pregame locker room that knows information that no one else does. I think you got to kind of roll with the punches with that. I will say Twitter, just like most sports, is probably your best friend when it comes to getting this information early. And I've been working on a Twitter list for each different region. I have a Twitter list that I use for NFL with all the different beat writers that I trust and so forth. But for League, there's a couple things. Each team basically has their own Twitter page where they, will sometimes put roster updates and news before a game. There are some there's the big ones like C9 and TL, which are across multiple games. It can be tricky because they're posting information for all the different esports they have and different lineups and whatnot. But there are like C9, they have a coach named Reaper who's huge on Twitter and usually posts his, substitutions and whatnot before the games or even a day before, which is good. So I think a Twitter list is the way to go. You just have to know the right people to add in. And, that's something I've been involving over the years, and I'd be happy to share it. But there's no site that you can go to that's going to tell you who's in and who's out, and that's the bottom line.
Yeah, it's really tough. So reason subs would happen. So in NA and Europe, it doesn't happen that often because they don't carry the full 10 players in their teams.
Okay.
In LCK, you're going to get burned, and you're just going to have to learn to deal with it. I tend to have a little bit of a player if I'm worried about it. Like T1, they've always run 2 junglers. It used to be SKT, now they're just T1. And right now they're running Cuz and Elim, I think is how you pronounce his name. Elim's a rookie who they're trying to get some screen time, and Cuz is kind of the veteran. And if
Danny's laughing.
I'm laughing at how this is just analogous. It's like get the rookie QB and then guard.
Yeah. So like last I think it was the last match T1 played, they dropped a game to Hanwha eLife, who is a lower tier team. They immediately subbed out Elim, who's a rookie, because he didn't look great there, and they put in Cuz, and then Cuz came in and just dominated that game and won the match for them. So if a player has a bad game and they have a sub who sometimes comes in they're going to sub. But sometimes they'll just have a player on their roster who looks like he's a sub, but he's really not a sub. He just doesn't play all that much. He comes in once every 2 months. They'll bring him in. But sometimes in LCK, if the best team is going against the worst team, they'll want to get someone just some time. So they'll just sub him in randomly. And you're like, no.
So how do you differentiate? Because it seems like ultimately there's kind of two situations. There's the random ones where it's like an NBA where it's just truly like some guy who's listed as healthy, just out, just didn't start, and they might not even put it out. Just a game time decision, didn't come out before lock, anything like that. And those ones, there's nothing you can really do other than kind of bite the bullet. But then there's those other situations that you seem to be talking about where you might have some idea of, okay, they might try to work this guy in certain situations. Like, what are the things you're looking for to try to identify the ones that you can actually try to act on in some way?
This is one of my favorite ways to get an edge, because you think about the average person that's going into DraftKings and building a League of Legends lineup, they're going to pick 2 teams to stack because they're knowledgeable enough to do that. But say they get to mid lane, right? And one team has 2 mid laners and the other team that you're stacking has 1 mid laner. 95% of the people are going to play that team with the 1 mid laner in their stack, and they're going to avoid the team that has 2 potential mid laners in that stack. So what I like to do is, in kind of goes into your question you're just asking, Andy, is first look at when was the last time that sub played, right?
Yeah.
The other thing to look at is this a meaningful game? The example Mav just gave where they have this rookie jungler on the bench. I forget the game that it was, but it was a bottom tier team that they were playing.
Okay.
So if you look at it that way, there's probably a good chance they're going to want to get that guy screen time on a game that doesn't mean much.
So it really is similar to traditional sports where like in maybe a blowout or in just like a completely lopsided matchup, they're going to try to, like, the likelihood of subbing goes up. And I guess you can tell in advance the lopsided matches. For the others, where there's a blowout, it's harder to predict that. But what you can say is that would probably lower the ceiling, obviously, and of the people that would be getting subbed out. So like some guy who is probably going to benefit the most in that game, if he has a high likelihood of getting pulled out, then that's someone that you probably don't want to value as much.
Okay. Even if we look at the slate today, right, I think it's 3 Eastern, but we talked about the FlyQuest team in that top laner situation that's come up between Viper and Solo. I mean, when I look at the slate today and I look at that, to me, that's the edge, right? If I want a FlyQuest stack, I'm going to have that top laner or a combination of both in different lineups in those stacks, because I guarantee you most of the people that are going to stack FlyQuest today are going to probably avoid top lane and just take the top laner from the other team they're stacking just to avoid that risk. But I think that risk is an edge to be had. So that's just something that I look at and I've always found useful over the years.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, given the fact you're saying that like everyone gets burned on subs, that definitely means that if it's hard to, if you can do some deep analysis and figure out, oh, this guy's more likely to get subbed than people think, or less likely to get subbed, or this person is probably going to be subbed in, that's definitely going to be a big source of edge.
It is. It is definitely an edge.
I just want to kind of summarize what I've heard from you guys, and let me know if I'm getting it right. So for Europe and America, you have less than 10-man rosters, and they're best out of 1 game.
They're allowed to have 10-man rosters. Just a lot of the teams don't bring in 10.
Okay. So Europe and America, it is clear that you don't have to worry about subs as much.
Not nearly as much.
Okay, I would say this before you go on to the next spot, Danny, because it's important, is these NA and LEC teams have academy teams is what they're called, and they're essentially the minor league team of that professional team. But for any given slate, they could pull someone up, especially now, right, where people are playing at home. They're not in a giant arena, where they could call up someone that's on their academy team to take the spot of someone else at any given time. And DK isn't going to show all those players all the time as potential player pool people.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
So if you're aware of that they pulled someone up, then that immediately increases the likelihood of a substitution for that team.
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so for Korea and China, we have best out of 3. So basically, after the first game is played or after the second game is played, you may get a substitution, right?
Yeah.
So it's possible that someone who's in the starting lineup won't play all 3 games.
Correct.
Right.
If that team gets blown, this is typically the way LPL and LCK do it. If a team gets blown out, I mean, they're probably going to make a sub, right? And if the team wins, just just normal logic, they're not going to sub anyone out if they won the game.
And in general, is it pretty linear when considering the risk of someone being subbed is based on like how skilled they are as a player? Like the really good players on given teams are not going to get subbed, right?
Generally, yeah.
But the guys who are not as good, maybe like the worst guy in the starting lineup or the worst two guys, those are the guys who are really at a risk.
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah. But they do give rest to those star players. I mean, that's the other thing too.
Yes,
and it sounds silly to say rest.
Then the other thing you were saying was the blowout consideration, which is if one team is facing like the worst team, if the really good team's facing the worst team in the league, you have to worry about them.
Yeah. Thankfully for LPL, they actually put out their lineups every time, so you know who's going to be starting for that day. They're the only league to do that, but I think a lot of it has to do with competitive edge too. Like Korea is super competitive, so they don't want to give out who they're going to be playing to try to hold a small edge over it.
Okay, interesting.
And even if they're starting, doesn't mean they play all 2-3 games.
So kind of moving into some of the other considerations, Kyle, you had talked a bit about just what you're going through when you're picking the captain, or at least like narrowing the player pool there. Like just in general, what roles tend to, in your experience, make the best captains, and why is that?
Yeah, I mean, ADC and mid lane are always the two. I'd probably put ADC as with a slight edge. I mean, their role in the game, just if you look at the game, is to deal damage and kill as many people as possible. A mid laner is kind of the same thing. So, I'm always going to have mid lane and ADC. Just looking at the games recently and kind of what people are doing, I'm just trying to figure out what the general public is doing. I mean, it seems like most people are sticking with ADC. I think the couple of lineups I had that did well yesterday had a mid laner in there. And then, when I'm in SS and I'm going through my player pool and the captain spots.
In SS just being SaberSim?
Sorry, yeah, no more acronyms, yeah. I said I sort it by team because it really is team by team basis. And like Mav said, we've been doing it a while, so we kind of know the teams. But if you pull up Oracle's Elixir at the same time, if a jungler has a high kill participation, I'm probably going to keep him as a potential captain spot. And then there are even people, we talked about it earlier, where top lane is kind of isolated. They do their own thing. But there are some teams that really play through their top laner because he is the best player on their team. And, 100 Thieves is a good example. There's a guy the top laner on that team is Someday. And if you look at his kill participation, I think it's one of the highest in the league, just because he's their best player and they're going to try and play through him. So from a team perspective, they're going to try and do whatever is best for the team and the best way for them to win. And sometimes that game theory is playing through a position that isn't typically, meta for DFS, which is ADC or mid.
Interesting.
So I go team by team. Yeah, it's really
Alex. Does that roughly align with kind of your approach?
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely teams. Like if you look at Dignitas, Huni, granted he has been not great lately, but he is known for sometimes having these hard carry performances where he just takes over the game because they play through top lane and he comes down and he smashes the game and gets most of the kills. Yeah, or if you look at Dig recently, the past 2 games, they've changed their approach. Now it's Froggen in the mid lane and Johnson in the bot lane who have been doing the majority of the work. So sometimes it really just depends on the approach. There are some top laners, yes, I'll have as captain, but generally, yeah, it's mid ADC. Every once in a while, I'll have a jungler in there if they're a really aggressive jungler. Blabber from C9 tends to sometimes have ridiculous scores because he's in everything. The dude is just running the show right now. So, yeah, generally ADC, mid, and then I try not to put support in there unless I'm almost 100% positive only the favorites are going to win that day.
And actually, well, you guys, so you're mentioning the term carry or like carrying hard. Will you just talk a little bit about, so it seems like in general, the high scoring person on the team is the one you would call the carry, right? The person who's carrying.
Yeah, they're doing the work.
And what does that mean? Does that mean the team tries to pump this person up or let them get the kills or
keep them alive? Yeah.
Yeah.
So in general, would you say whoever is the carry on a given team should probably be the captain or is going to be the highest scoring guy?
Yeah, but typically you don't know who that is until the draft happens, right?
No, but like with the team stats, you can kind of guess based on kill participation rate.
Yeah.
Who the carry is going to be. Okay, that's interesting. Thank you.
And I like what we've kind of been talking about is that we've talked about what Kyle calls and like what is called like more in like direct in League of Legends, like the meta of the kind of heuristics for stacks of these are the typical positions here. And I think knowing those will give newer players a very strong baseline where it's like, okay, it's hard to go wrong if you follow this. But if you do have more time, if you are interested in this, here are the ways where you can get edges by finding the spots that kind of violate those heuristics. So where are these wrong? And that goes back to a lot of what Danny and Max have talked about in kind of all the videos they put out for the different sports. So here are what are kind of the rules of thumb. Here are how to take advantage of those when they're wrong. And here's what you should be looking for. And here's how to adapt to get that extra edge on the field. And one thing I wanted to touch on is because we did talk about how to kind of adjust for the different leagues, but how are you generally adjusting your strategy based on the size of the slate? Is it just kind of, I'm assuming it's similar where it would be with any DFS sport where it's the smaller the slate, the more upside you kind of have to factor in because you need to, the realm of possibilities is much smaller, so you need to really focus as being different because it's going to be a lot harder to be different. Is that accurate? And I guess how do you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Mav and I kind of talked about this, but if you look at like the slate today at 3, right, which is 2 games, it's a completely different strategy for me. And I would do things in this slate that I would never consider in a 5-6 game slate, just because, I mean, and this has come up a lot. And I know SaberSim recently added that feature to remove the game stack. But I mean, in a 2-game slate, and if you, especially the one tonight, if you look at the data behind it, it's a perfect scenario for a game stack because if you look at we talked about the CPKM, right? You have 2 of the highest CPKM teams in LCS going against each other tonight, and 2 of the bottom CPKM teams going against each other. So it just, in theory, a game stack would make sense there because it's a best of 1, and there's a good chance that this is just going to be a bloody game with tons of people getting kills on both teams. And there's a good chance the other game is maybe a 10-1 kill game and there's nothing there. And in that case, it would be, you'd need the game stack to have a chance. It's just, it depends on the slate, but the smaller it is, the more likely I would be to do a game stack or something like that. And I know this has come up a lot. The other thing I would say, and then Mav can give his 2 cents, but I would be more willing to get weird in a captain spot on a 2-game slate or even a 3-game slate.
I was going to say I'm probably going to have Top in my, at least someday, and Hooney both in my captain slot in some type of lineups today.
Right. And
just to be different.
There are some 2-game slates too where the pricing is just so vast between the top team to the bottom team where it's made sense to have a team in the captain spot, although I'm not usually a big fan of that. But it can vary from slate to slate. But the smaller the slate is, the weirder you can get.
Is the reason you would have a team, like a worse team in the captain spot there, is just so you would have more money for, like, to pay up for the other guys on the other positions, or?
Kind of. Well, it'd be basically if, like, in my range of outcomes, we talked about C9 versus CLG being a 90%. If I was confident in 100% of 2 different teams on a 2-game slate, and I thought there was no chance for that losing team to win or put up any sort of fantasy relevant points, I would be willing to consider a team in the captain spot for there. As I've kind of matured over the years, I found that kind of punting that team we talked about earlier and getting at least a juggler or a top in that spot with price considered is something I would typically do over having a team in that captain spot. But I've seen winning lineups on these small slates with the team in the captain spot for weird reasons.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often, but maybe the game just went a really long time and they got a whole bunch of objectives and they just scored really well in a low-scoring game.
Okay. And I mean, that makes sense. It's finding those ways to differentiate where it's not just differentiation for its own sake, but it's trying to take advantage of the different game scripts that could play out, even if they are rare, because on those small slates, if you want to win, that's what you have to have happen, is you kind of have to say, okay, how could these games play out and what could that look like? And then make sure you have a lineup to take advantage of that. And kind of building from this, I want to just kind of tie it all together a bit and just kind of show what this looks like in practice. So Alex or Kyle, like whoever kind of want to jump in, like, do you want to kind of walk through just what your research process looks like at a high level? We can talk about the slate coming up today in just a couple hours. I just kind of want to hear from you, like, what specifically are you doing for this slate, and what does a build actually look like as you're making your lineups?
Sure. Let me close.
Kind of gave away some of the secrets already, which we see today, and the multiple top laners.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
As he pulls it up, though, I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about and tying it all together is those key differentiators and what the average person is not going to want to do, right? And they're not going to want to play a top laner from Fly. They're not going to want to have, Sunday in the captain spot, but someone that takes the time to do the research and, understands these teams, those are the plays to be had.
Exactly. So just looking at this slate, so here's SaberSim. I'll go to Oracle's Elixir. I'll go to LCS 2020 Spring regular season. Have it load up. So just looking at the games today. So CKPM, we have FlyQuest versus 100 Thieves. If you look here, the top 3 are 2 out of 4. So they're the 3rd and 4th place CKPM. If you look at Dignitas, who's 6th, and then we look at Immortals, who's 8th, you can kind of make your ideas on what the 2 games are going to look like. These 2 teams like to team fight, so they're probably going to put together team fights or team comps that go forward. They're going to want to try to create it so that they can actually fight and win a fight and then take objectives.
And team fight, is it literally what it sounds like?
It's where 5v5, like 5 people beating on 5 people.
Right.
I know Immortals really well. Xmithy is their jungler, and he's been jungling in the LCS for the past 8 years. He's always been the same type of person. He doesn't have really good mechanics, but his shot calling and his ability to control the map are probably the best in the LCS. So he's going to be more objective focused. I actually wrote a write-up for the last Immortals game where I said, this game's going to be really boring. Nothing's going to happen for the first 20, 25 minutes. And then team fights will happen and one team will win. And everyone was like, this game is so boring. Why is this game so boring? I'm like, if you just read my write-up, I talk about it right here. I told you what was going to happen in this game. They're like, oh yeah, you were spot on there. So Immortals and Dignitas. Froggen, who is the mid laner for Dignitas, he doesn't like to team fight early. He's been the same way since he played on CLG EU 9 years ago. He likes to drag the game out for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. All he does is like the CS. And then once he gets a bunch of items and he's really powerful, he knows he can team fight with the best of them. So then they'll group up and then they'll actually fight. Immortals kind of likes to do the same thing, but they're more objective focused in the beginning, and they'll try to take the dragons. They'll try to get the Baron. They'll try to do different things, but they don't really like to fight either. These 2 teams are probably going to stare at each other for the first 30 minutes of this game, and then stuff is going to happen. If you look at 100 Thieves, their jungler is Meteos, who has always been known for being very aggressive. And FlyQuest tends to be a more aggressive team also. So look for these teams to actually have more fighting in the beginning. I bet you they're going to dive top lane. So what I mean by dive is they're going to try to push the top laner under his turret and do stuff under there, and then they're going to bring 3 or 4 people and try to kill that person over and over again to get him super far behind and get an advantage there. So looking at these, if I'm going to target teams in this one, I'm probably going to target FlyQuest, and I'm going to target 100 Thieves. Now,
Game stack.
Game stack, I will 100% have a game stack of this game.
And one thing, before we jump off this page, we've talked a bit about CKPM, but are there any other stats you're looking at to kind of help get an idea of, okay, these are the aggressive teams, this is how they play, or does a lot of that just have to come from watching the matches?
First blood percentage right here, if you look at that, generally first blood percentage sometimes correlates to how aggressive they are but you can look at Team Solo Mid, who has an 81% first blood.
What does that mean? 81%? They draw the first blood?
Yeah, they draw the first blood.
Okay.
How about AGT is average game time? Obviously longer game time mean more higher creep score, which isn't as impactful. But should that be
Well, if you look here, like Cloud9 has the lowest average game time, but they have the highest CKPM. Okay. Why is that? Because Cloud9 is by far the best team in NA. Like, they just run the table so hard that they do it. And then you look here. Here are the two highest game times compared to kill, like CKPM. It's kind of the lowest. But that's more because, like, Immortals likes to just play for objectives. They don't want a bunch of kills. So their game times are going to go longer because they're just trying to gain small advantage after small advantage after small advantage till they finally get a big enough advantage to push to end the game.
Okay, that makes sense.
And Mav, can you go to the player stats section for LCS?
Yeah, for sure.
This is another key column that I always look at.
Stats LCS 2020.
And if you go to when it loads the damage percent column. Yeah. So I mean, I equivalent this to like the air yards model, maybe in NFL, right? And basically it's just telling you how often, so separate from kill participation, but how much damage are they dealing compared to the rest of the team. And if you scroll back over and look at positions, because people are probably just starting to get to know these people, goes back to our previous points about ADC and middle
and ADC. Yep.
But I think if you go to page 2 or 3, you'll start seeing junglers and top laners pop up. But if you're in a small game stack and you're trying to figure out, and you don't know these teams, who the impactful people are, I would look at that. So
yeah,
you look at FlyQuest, Power of Evil's #1 there in the whole league. If you watch the games, you can see that they play around him. First of all, they'll get it. They're not going to put him on one of those.
They won't put him on a tank. No.
That we talked about before. He's going to be on a champion that can potentially carry. And the jungler is also going to be trying to make plays around him to get him ahead. So this is a good thing to look at when you're starting to get to know teams and who people kind of play around. Danny talked about the correlation between jungler and ADC. If I'm on Golden Guardians, there's probably a good chance that Closer, the jungler on Golden Guardians, is probably going to play through his bottom lane because he's going to try and get him ahead. So another key thing I look at.
Yeah, Closer's also very aggressive too.
Yep.
Awesome. And so, having this background in there, we've gone over this. Like, how are you translating this into the actual build, Alex?
All right, so here we go. We're going to go to SaberSim, if I can click it, and I want to move it over here so I can stop clicking that dumb stuff. All right, here we go. So just looking at this, the first thing I do is I go to the All tab and I X out all the subs. So Alltech isn't playing today. I'm going to X him out. Greg isn't playing today. I'm going to X him out.
The question is, how do you know all this, right?
Yes.
Oh, how do I know this?
That's the hardest part.
Here's the easy way to do that. DraftKings is under one of these, I think. So if we look at, let's look at top lane right now. I'm going to clear this out. So Solo played 328, 322, 321. So he's obviously missed some games in there.
Are there games every day?
There are games twice a week.
Okay.
So if we look at Viper, he played was 329, but he didn't play until like a month ago or like 21 days before that. So something is happening where he's getting subbed in there. Will that scare me a little bit? Maybe. But Kyle was talking about this earlier with me. FlyQuest, when Solo has played, they're 2-0. When Viper played last time, they lost the game. It might be a good edge here because Viper played last to have one or two solo guys in your lineup, the player solo, to have a little bit of edge on the field. Because they may see, we lost with Viper, but we won the last two with Solo. Let's put Solo in this time. And that may not be broad news to the public. Besides that...
Makes a lot of sense. So wait, just to be clear. So basically, is one way you can tell if someone's a sub-risk is if DraftKings is listing two people in the same lane on a team?
Yeah. And it might not be a big risk. I go through and click the players and look at the last time they played. Because sometimes it's like 2 months ago.
Do this. If you go to jungle, Mav, this is a good example. So if you look at Dig, right? So they have two junglers there, Katie and Greg. So if you look at the last time Greg played 3-9 and it was a loss, and he lost a bunch of games before that.
Yeah.
Then you look at Acadian, who's played all the past games. So with some wins in there.
Acadian is probably not that much of a sub risk here.
No, I would say
absolutely not.
Yeah.
That, and I know Greg is awful, so they're not going to play him. But yeah, you can just look.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, you can look at the dates and get a real understanding of when people are playing. And besides that, Alltech was playing for a while, and Immortals wasn't playing that well. If you look at these, 0-1, 0-1, 0-1, 0-1.
Okay.
He lost a bunch of games in a row.
It's important to understand the context of this slate. This is a playoff to get into playoffs.
Yeah, exactly.
Teams aren't going to fool around here. Like, they're putting their
Right.
best foot
They're
forward.
gonna play their best players by far. And even though Immortals has lost the last 2 games, Apollo was still getting some wins in those games, so they're going to be playing him.
And so we get that information. We uncheck them from. Is it from the entire player pool, just from captain?
Hold on, my dog.
From the entire player pool, right?
I would say, yeah. I like to because I'm still kind of getting used to SaberSim too, right? But I go to top lane first. I don't do everyone all together. It just makes it more organized for me and my ADD brain. But I'll go to top lane.
Yeah.
And go over to DraftKings. Go to the team that I'm sorting by. How many top laners do they have? And so just Mav, click on top for me.
It's not that many.
Yeah. So if I go to and click team, just to sort it by team.
It's already sorted, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So obviously I would leave
in
team in terms of this being a bigger slate, right? If IMT only has 1, I'm going to leave him. But then I get to fly and I see 2 there. That's when I'm going to go over to DraftKings and do that process we just talked about, right? And figure out who's more likely to play. If they're both in there, maybe I'm going to limit my exposure for that particular player to, depending on how many lineups I'm playing. If I think there's a chance they both play, but I would say it was pretty certain today that Solo would play based on what they said on Twitter and also the way the last 3 games have gone. So there's much risk there in Xing out Viper.
Right. So we click out Viper, jungle. Grig isn't going to play, and then
Does that make sense? What I just said, though?
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, for sure.
So basically, from what we discussed, top lane was a real iffy one. On there's a possibility we see a sub in that game.
Right. Absolutely.
The jungle and mid, it seemed pretty clear. You're not
everything else is totally fine.
Okay, cool.
Now realize,
just to be clear, the way this works right now in the optimizer is that if you exclude someone by unchecking them from their position, they will no longer be eligible for that position. But there's a separate entry for them for captain. So you just want to make sure you get them in both spots when you're doing this.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
Captain, you narrow it down different too. We kind of touched upon it, but you're not going to just remove people that aren't playing. You're going to remove people that have no place being in a captain spot, right? Supports or teams and whatnot.
And if you uncheck from the all tab, will it uncheck from?
There will be 2 players.
It unchecks both.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yeah, that's why I do it from the all tab, because it just unchecks them from the captain and the other one. But we all have our different ways of doing it. So we've clicked out Alltech. We got Grig. We'll take out Viper. And I think we got Grig in there. You can search him in here too. Yeah, we got Grig. And those are the only ones that I'm really worried about. We got that one. We got that one. So now we're good to build. So
and one thing to just add as a quick point of information is that with our traditional lineup builder for the other sports, we don't advise spending too much time pruning the player pool because because the fact that we simulate all the games, we're able to take advantage of correlations and everything else to just not put random people in your lineups. So you don't need as much control. But right now, especially when there aren't projections in there, you do want to remove those players that you don't want at all. If you are using projections, this becomes less important because assuming the projections are accurate, the players you don't want aren't going to be projected well. But that's just kind of getting some context around this. Right,
because if you don't unclick them, they will show up in your player pools when you make lineups. So just make sure that you do click them out.
Yep.
It's happening.
So jumping into the build settings, Alex.
So we just continue with FPGG. Today we might be allowing players on opposing teams once we start actually going into the game stacks if I decide to make them.
Let's talk about salary real quick. This question has come up a bunch in Slack chat about should I have money left over?
This is not something where you're trying to max out the salary.
Just think about the field that's in there, right? Making lineups manually. They're going in there picking 2 stacks, but what they're doing, and this is the process I used to use when I first started, is I'd pick a favorite, right? I'd pick, Cloud9 is my favorite team. And then I would scroll down and figure out, based on the team salary, what other stacks I could fit with Cloud9.
Mm-hmm.
And I would play those people, and that would be it. But what I started as I had more success and figured out, different edges to be had, kind of what Mav just said, is I'd pick 2 dogs, right? 2 lower teams, like below the 5,000 dollar price for a team mark, play those people, you're going to have, at least 10,000 left over, but the ownership is going to be tied to that. So even if one of those stacks at the lower price is popular, chances are there's not many people stacking that other team, that other dog with that team, as you would be doing. So there's an edge to be had there. They're going to be stacking that chalk low price team with another high priced, chalk team per se as well.
That's where you get on that the unique lineups.
Like this, I think applies similarly as it would in traditional sports, where it's like on a showdown, you probably don't want to use all of your salary, right? Because the likelihood of there being a duplicate lineup or the likelihood of just being on highly owned players goes up dramatically. And so as variance increases in a sport, as a player pool shrinks, as a number of entrants in a tournament increases, all those things play in it. Like that's when you kind of have to force other ways of diversifying in that you may not otherwise. So I think on a large slate in a smaller tournament at lower stakes where it's not going to be as sophisticated, there's not going to be as clear chalk and this and that, and like there's more options to pick from. You don't want to necessarily force a ton of money left on the table, but it's not a bad option. But as those factors start to change, that's when you do just need to have diversification in almost any way you can get.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
And so from here, we've talked a bit about the salary ranges. The stacking, I know, is going to be a big piece of what you're doing. So can we walk through the steps of kind of how you would set those rules up for this slate?
I would also check that box in the main tab about the game stack, right?
If I'm going to make game stack. So generally how I do it 5 to 10 lineups at a time. I'll have it just make multiple different stacks at a time, because right now there's no easy way to limit your player pool in terms of your exposure to them. So right now you can set exposure to a team, but you can't set exposure to a player. So depending on how I want to make my lineups, I might make 5, download that, put it in the CSV, make another 5, depending on how I want to do it. But I'm sure that will change as we go.
We're recording this on March 30th, and the tools that we've put out for the optimizer, they're completely free to use for anybody. You don't need to put a credit card in or anything at all. But we're still working on improving it. We want to get it into people's hands so that we get some feedback and keep working on it. So at the time of the recording, you're not able to get the fine control over exposures as you can with the rest of our lineup builders. But that will be coming within the next week or two. So keep an eye on that. But for now, this is how Alex is approaching that.
Yeah. So I'll make a 4-3 stack. So I'll set it at least 4 players from the same team, at least 3 players from the same team. Generally, it really depends on how I'm making my lineups at the time. Sometimes I don't want the team to be in my 4 stack. I just want 4 players. So it would be 4 players, 1 with the captain slot, and then 3 players with my team in there. And then I'll unclick the captain part of it so that the captain isn't one of the third 3 people. So if you make lineups this way, let's say we're going to make a 100 Thieves Dig lineup. No, I think Dig's a favorite. No. Yeah. Anyways, we'll go with that. And we're going to have max exposure. I'll end up making, 5 lineups. And then we'll build. I'm going to look at the pool it gives me and see how I feel about it. First thing I always do is I'm going to go into the captain, see who's in there. Cody, Sunfrog, and Johnson. Great. Mid, ADC, mid. We're doing okay so far. I'm going to go through the pool to make sure it didn't accidentally put someone in there who's not playing. Right now we're doing okay.
Yeah, because this is one of those kind of just frankly pain in the ass things where there isn't that official starting lineup put out there. So keep that in mind. We do our best to pull in the status and everything from DraftKings, but they're not. They have the same information we do, so it's not something that we can automatically update. So just keep that in mind as you're going through this. And Alex, as you're checking to see is this guy playing or not? What are you basing that on? Is it just kind of what we talked about with I guess, first following some of the Twitter accounts like Kyle talked about, but also just looking at the sub stuff? Is that what you're kind of looking at there?
Yeah, just the last dates and stuff that they played, and just kind of a knowledge on just from watching the games, the chances that a sub would be going in. Now, looking at this, I think so we have all 4 teams in here. So did I mess something up with my stacking? Oh, yeah, okay. So I messed something up with my stacking. So if I'm going to make 100 Thieves Dig lineup, let's do this correctly. So my 4 stack is going to be 100 Thieves. My 3 stack is going to be Dig. So when I make my lineups, okay, there we go. So I have all 100 Thieves on my captain slot. Ryoma, Meteos, Cody-san. I'm kind of okay with that. Cody-san tends to carry the games for 100 Thieves. Ryoma tends to be a little more of a... he's not focused on too much because he's not the focal point of the team because he's really not that good. But Cody-san does tend to... do a lot. If you look at Cody-san's stats, he's actually been playing out of his mind recently with their 1 or 2 games where he's not been great. Someday at top lane, absolutely fine. Jungle, we get a few Acadian, 1 Meteos. I'd maybe like a little more Meteos, but I'm okay with that because I have him twice in my captain slot. Mid, Froggen's going to be higher exposed than Ryoma. And then, I'll look through this. Everyone in there is playing. Great. I got 5 lineups that I kind of like. And then I'll go through, I'll download it. I can't get to it as easily right now because it's hidden behind here. But I'll download it, put it into my CSV, and then I'll make 5 more lineups. Now I'm like, all right, what do I want for my next game to be? Maybe I'll just mix this up so I can have 4 Dig and 3 100 Thieves, and then I get my Dig captains, and I get Froggen and captain, and Johnson and captain, and Acadian and captain. Great. I have 5 more lineups, and then I'll start switching things around. Sometimes I will allow it to be like a 3-4 where my 3 is a captain, like in the LPL slate. I had the only way I could get FPX into the captain slot easily was by having my 3 FPX players, 1 in the captain because they're so expensive, and 4 from the cheaper guys, where one of the 4th one of my guys was my team. So sometimes you have to play around with it to get what you're looking for.
Yeah, and one thing to add is that this shows kind of the level of control that you may want to have. If you have very specific exposures that you want, this is currently the most straightforward way of doing it, is just doing separate builds to get those exact exposures and combining them afterwards. But if you don't have that strong of a preference, if this is something where you're just getting started with it and you want to do a little bit of research and kind of make some tweaks here or there, but you're not trying to get things dialed in exactly, you can just set stacking rules that aren't as restrictive. You can have options for multiple teams in there and just do all of your builds, all of your lineups in one build. And that's definitely the more traditional approach. But if you want that extra control, if this is something that you're really focused on, you can do it this way as well.
Yeah, like let's say I wanted to do 100% 100 Thief stacks in my 3 spot, but I want to split between Dig and IMT in my 4 spot. I can put 50% max exposure, click the build, and then if I look at my team stacks, I made 5, so you can't get 50%. But you have 100% 100 Thieves, and then these 2 are going to be split. If I made 6, it would be 50-50. But then I can kind of control the exposure a little bit more to the certain teams that I'm looking for to get there. Now, let's say I didn't want certain people in my captain slot. Like I didn't want it to give me, like I got a jungle in my captain spot and I didn't want that. I can go back to here and go to the captain spot and click out that person, and then it won't give them to me in my captain spot, and I can narrow down who I want in my captain spot a lot more if I really only want ADC and mid in my captain spot. Yeah,
and kind of what Alex is showing you is how our lineup optimizer works today for League of Legends and how you can use that to get basically the exact level of control you're looking for. This is something that we are offering for completely free until the major sports come back. You can sign up for an account. You don't need to put your credit card, anything at all. Play around with it. Let us know what you think, because we are actively working on this and we have a lot of improvements coming, but I'm sure there is more we can do. So let us know what you think. Once you create an account, you can always click that green question mark in the bottom right corner to shoot us an email. You can email me at andy@sabersim.com and let me know what you think. And on that note, the same goes for this content. We really appreciate Kyle and Alex joining us to kind of let us pick their brains and to share what they know about League of Legends. We try to be as thorough as we could, but I'm sure there are things we missed. So if you still have questions after this, let us know. Once you sign up for an account, if you want to get into our Slack, just shoot us an email. We can get you in there, and that's going to be the best place to get a hold of those guys, get a hold of me, whatever it may be. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you have any questions. But I think with all of this out there, this should be more than enough to get you started, to get you on the way to building profitable League of Legends contests. And truly, these contests are getting huge. And I don't think they're going away anytime soon. So play around with it. Let us know what you think, and good luck out there. But guys, thank you again so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
You got it,
This
man.
is awesome. Yeah.
Thanks,
Awesome.
guys. I learned a lot too.
Yeah. And so just head to sabersim.com to get started. And as always, good luck.